What happens if you see a crime being committed? What's your duty? And what if you're the one being arrested? What are your rights? These are pretty intense questions, right? But knowing the answers is so important. So, in this explainer, we're going to break down the official law of arrest, from your duties as a regular citizen to the limits on police power, and finally, to your own fundamental rights.
So just imagine for a second, you're walking down the street, minding your own business, and you see something serious go down. What does the law actually expect you to do? Do you have to get involved? It's a question we should all probably have an answer to, just in case.
Okay, now let's flip the script. What if the interaction isn't something you're watching from a distance, but something happening directly to you? This is where knowing the rules isn't just a nice to know. It becomes absolutely critical for making sure everything is handled fairly and for protecting yourself.
And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're not going to guess or talk about hypotheticals. We're going straight to the official legal text and breaking down the protocols step by step. The goal here is for you to have a really clear, direct understanding of how all of this actually works.
Okay, so let's dive right in with the first part, which is all about your role as a citizen. See, the law isn't just for police officers or lawyers. It actually sets out some really specific expectations for everyone.
So, what do you have to report? Well, the law is very specific about this. You actually have a legal duty to tell the nearest magistrate, that's a type of judge, or a police officer about certain serious situations. We're talking about things like seeing a known fugitive, finding out about a plan to commit a major crime, or, discovering a body under suspicious circumstances. This isn't about being a busybody. It's a legal duty designed to help keep the whole community safe.
Now, you might notice this term non-bailable offense pop up. It's a legal category, but for our purposes, you can just think of these as the most serious types of crimes. These are offenses where the justice system is extra cautious and doesn't grant an automatic right to get out on bail. And it's usually this level of crime that triggers that mandatory duty to report we just talked about.
All right, let's switch gears and look at this from the police side of things. It's not as simple as an officer just deciding to arrest someone. The power to arrest someone without a warrant is actually very carefully defined and limited by the law.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Look at the huge difference here. For less serious crimes, those with a punishment of less than 7 years, the police need two things. First, a reasonable belief the person did it, and second, they have to decide the arrest is necessary. But for the most serious crimes, we're talking 7 years or more, the threshold is lower. All they need is credible information. This gives them more power to act fast when public safety is really at risk.
So let's zoom in on that checklist for the less serious offenses. It's a really clear two-part test. First, the officer has to have a good reason to believe the person is guilty, based on some kind of complaint or information. But, and this is so important, that's not enough on its own. They then have to go to step 2 and prove that making an arrest is actually necessary.
So what does necessary even mean? It's not just a gut feeling. The law lays out the only acceptable reasons. The officer has to ask themselves, do I need to arrest this person to stop them from doing this again, or to investigate properly? Or maybe to keep them from destroying evidence or scaring witnesses? Or is it simply to make sure they'll actually show up for court? This whole checklist is designed to make sure that taking away someone's freedom is a last resort, not the first move.
And here is the accountability piece. That decision the officer makes, it has to be written down. They have to record why they believe the arrest was necessary. And what's more, if they decide not to make an arrest when they could have, they also have to write down their reasons for that. So it's a check on their power in both directions, which is pretty clever.
Okay, so once the decision to arrest has been made and it's been justified, a very specific protocol kicks in. This isn't just random, it's a formal procedure that's designed to be clear and fair for everybody involved.
Every single arrest has to follow these 3 rules. No exceptions. 1. The officer has to be clearly identifiable. You should be able to see their name tag. 2. They have to create an official written record of the arrest, which is called a memorandum. And 3. They must tell the person they're arresting about their right to let somebody know what's happening. These aren't suggestions, they are absolute duties.
And this is a really crucial point. The arrest isn't supposed to be some secret event that happens between a police officer and an individual. That official arrest memo, that piece of paper, has to be witnessed. The law says it should be a family member if possible, but if not, a respectable member of the locality will do. It even has to be signed by the person who is being arrested. This whole process brings the act of arrest out into the open.
But the transparency doesn't even stop there. The law requires that a record of every single arrest, we're talking names, addresses, and the alleged crimes, has to be kept and displayed in a public area at the police station and also at the district headquarters. This creates an official public log, which adds another really important layer of accountability to the whole process.
All right, and that brings us to the most personal part of all this, your rights. If you are the person being arrested, the law gives you specific fundamental protections. So let's lay them out nice and clear.
First things first, you do not have to go through this alone. The law guarantees your right to have someone notified. It could be a family member, a friend, whoever you choose. This isn't just a courtesy, it's a fundamental right to make sure you're not being held in isolation and that somebody on the outside knows exactly where you are and what's going on.
And this one is critical. You have the right to a lawyer. The law states very clearly that when you're being interrogated by the police, you are entitled to meet with an advocate of your choice. Now, the text does say this might not be for the entire duration of the interrogation, but that core right to consult with your lawyer during that process is absolutely protected.
And so, that brings us to the big question at the end of all this. We've walked through a citizen's duty, the police's power, the strict rules of an arrest, and the rights you have as an individual. All of these rules are trying to perform this incredibly delicate balancing act. So the question I want to leave you with is this. Do you think this system does a good job of balancing the need for security and order with every person's fundamental right to freedom? It's a question that gets to the very heart of what it means to live in a free society.